Alaska feels less like a U.S. state and more like a frontier carved from another planet. It's a place where mountains scrape the edge of space, rivers braid through untouched wilderness, and wildlife outnumbers people by a staggering margin. It isn't just big, it's immense, mysterious, and filled with natural phenomena you won't find anywhere else on Earth. To understand Alaska is to understand the raw power of nature itself. Today, we're traveling through 50 wild facts about Alaska that will reshape how you see the last frontier. Fact 50. Bigger than many countries. Alaska's not just large, it's geographically overwhelming. It covers 663,268 square miles. To put that into perspective, you could fit Texas, California, and Montana inside Alaska simultaneously and still have an area the size of New England left over. If Alaska were its own country, it would be the 18th largest in the world, ranking just ahead of Iran. It spans so much longitude that if you superimposed it over the lower 48 United States, one island would touch the coast of California, while another would reach the coast of Florida. Fact 49. The country's tallest peak. Denali stands at 20,310 feet, but its height above sea level is only half the story. The true marvel is its vertical relief, the distance it rises from its surrounding base. Denali rises roughly 18,000 feet from its base plateau to its summit. In comparison, Mount Everest, though taller overall, only rises about 12,000 to 15,000 feet from the Tibetan Plateau. On a clear day, which is rare, the mountain glows pink at sunrise like a frozen cathedral, visible from Anchorage over 130 miles away. Fact 48. More earthquakes than anywhere in the U.S. Alaska is the most seismically active region in the United States. The Alaska Earthquake Center reports that the state experiences an average of 40 to 50,000 earthquakes every single year, more than all other 49 states combined. While most are too small to feel, the state bears the scars of giants. The 1964 Good Friday earthquake was a magnitude 9.2 event, the second largest quake in recorded human history. It was so powerful it liquefied the ground and rang the entire earth like a bell. Fact 47. A glacier kingdom. The state contains an estimated 100,000 glaciers, covering roughly 29,000 square miles, or 5% of the state's surface. Yet, only about 600 to 700 of them have been officially named. These aren't just patches of ice, they're massive, moving forces of nature. Some, like the Columbia Glacier, pour into the sea with thunderous crashes, while others crawl through valleys, grinding rock into dust. The Malaspina Glacier alone is larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Fact 46. Home to North America's largest ice field. The Bagley Ice Field, located in the St. Elias Mountains, is a prehistoric remnant of the Ice Age. It stretches over 125 miles long, up to 15 miles wide, and in some places, the ice is over 3,000 feet thick. It's so vast that it creates its own weather systems. Flying over it is a disorienting experience. The horizon disappears into a seamless blend of white ice and white sky, making you feel as if you're crossing the roof of a frozen world. Fact 45. A park larger than Switzerland. Wrangell's St. Elias National Park and Preserve is the undisputed king of the national park system. At 13.2 million acres, it's larger than Switzerland, Yosemite, and Yellowstone combined. Despite its size, it receives far fewer visitors than other major parks because most of it is completely roadless. It contains 9 of the 16 highest peaks in the United States, and if you venture deep enough into its interior, you're statistically likely to be the only human being for 100 miles. Fact 44. Rivers that carry mountains. If you look at Alaska's glacial rivers, you'll notice they run a milky, opaque blue. This isn't a reflection of the sky, it's caused by glacial flour. As glaciers move, they grind the bedrock beneath them into a fine silt that remains suspended in the meltwater. These rivers are literally carrying the mountains to the sea, one microscopic grain at a time. Under direct sunlight, this silt refracts light, making the water glow like spilled turquoise paint. Fact 43. The Northern Lights capital. Fairbanks is widely considered one of the best places on Earth to view the Aurora Borealis. Because of its location directly under the auroral oval, if you stay in Fairbanks for 3 nights during the winter, you have a 90% chance of seeing the lights. The colors, neon greens, deep violets, and rare reds, are caused by solar winds slamming into Earth's magnetosphere. The Inupiat people historically believed the lights were the spirits of animals or ancestors dancing in the sky. Fact 42. A volcano supercluster. Alaska is the northern edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire. the state is home to over 130 volcanoes and volcanic fields, roughly 50 of which have been active since around 1760. This includes the Aleutian Islands, a chain essentially built from volcanic eruptions. In some coastal regions, the geothermal activity is so intense that steam vents hiss from the ground, and pilots have to divert flights to avoid ash plumes that can rise 30,000 feet into the atmosphere. Fact 41. The world's largest submarine canyon. Hidden beneath the dark waters of the Bering Sea lies Zhangcheng Canyon. It's the largest submarine canyon in the world, significantly deeper and wider than the Grand Canyon. It plunges more than 8,500 feet deep. Because of the nutrient-rich upwellings from these depths, the water above the canyon is a green belt of life, supporting trillions of plankton, millions of seabirds, and massive populations of whales that travel thousands of miles just to feed here. Fact 40. Permafrost that stores ancient secrets. About 85% of Alaska sits atop permafrost, ground that remained completely frozen for 2 or more years straight. This frozen soil acts as a perfect time capsule. Miners and paleontologists frequently uncover perfectly preserved remains of the Pleistocene era, including steppe bison, woolly mammoth tusks, and ancient spruce forests that haven't seen the sun in 40,000 years. However, as the climate warms and permafrost thaws, it threatens to buckle roads and sink buildings across the state. Fact 39. A lake that freezes in blue hexagons. In the interior of Alaska, methane gas released from decomposing organic matter on lake bottoms gets trapped as the water freezes. On lakes like those near the Mendenhall Glacier, this creates stacks of frozen white bubbles suspended in crystal clear blue ice. When the conditions are perfect, the ice fractures into massive geometric hexagons. It looks like a three-dimensional abstract sculpture, but it's actually a suspended explosion of greenhouse gases waiting to melt. Fact 38. Moose, and more moose. Alaska is home to the subspecies Alces gigas, literally the giant moose. These are the largest moose on the planet. A mature bull can stand over 7 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh up to 1,600 pounds. They're surprisingly urban creatures in Alaska. In Anchorage, the state's largest city, there are often hundreds of moose living within city limits. It's not uncommon to find a half-ton animal casually eating ornamental trees in a suburban driveway. Fact 37. The roadless state. The infrastructure of Alaska is unique in the developed world. Roughly 80% of Alaska's communities are not connected to the road system. This includes the state capital, Juneau. You can't drive into or out of Juneau. You must take a plane or a ferry. For residents in the bush or remote Alaska, the highway is often a river in the summer and a frozen trail for snow machines in the winter. The sky is the real infrastructure here, which is why Alaska has 6 times as many pilots per capita as the rest of the U.S. Fact 36. A town where the river freezes in mid-flow. The Yukon River is nearly 2,000 miles long, and when winter hits the interior, temperatures can drop so fast that the river surface freezes while the current is still churning underneath. This creates a chaotic, jagged landscape of jumbled ice rather than a smooth rink. Residents of villages along the Yukon live with the eerie soundtrack of the river. Loud cracks, deep groans, and booms as the ice fights the water all winter long. Fact 35. Bears outnumber people in many regions. Alaska is the only place in the United States where all 3 species of North American bears, black, brown or grizzly, and polar, live. In the Tongass National Forest, the density of brown bears is one of the highest in the world, estimated at 1 bear for every square mile in some areas. On Admiralty Island, known to the Tlingit as Kootznoowoo, or Fortress of the Bear, bears outnumber human residents by a ratio of nearly 3-to-1. Fact 34. A super salmon highway. Alaska manages the most prolific wild salmon fishery left on Earth. Every summer, hundreds of millions of salmon return to the rivers of their birth to spawn and die. In Bristol Bay alone, the 2022 Sockeye Salmon Run broke records with nearly 80 million fish returning. This biomass feeds everything: the bears, the eagles, the forests via nutrients from decaying fish, and the economy. It's a biological conveyor belt that has sustained Alaskan native cultures for millennia. Fact 33. A lake monster legend. Lake Iliamna, Alaska's largest lake, is the subject of a cryptic legend. For generations, pilots, fishermen, and Alaskan natives have reported seeing massive, dark shapes in the water. Some estimated to be 10 to 20 feet long. Known as Ili, The creature is often speculated to be a population of enormous, elusive white sturgeon or perhaps a sleeper shark that adapted to fresh water. While never proven, the consistency of the sightings keeps the mystery alive. Fact 32. The Midnight Sun. In Barrow, now Utqiagvik, and other areas north of the Arctic Circle, the sun does not set for weeks at a time. In Utqiagvik, the sun stays above the horizon for roughly 80 days, from early May to early August. This phenomenon, the midnight sun, creates a surreal endless day where time loses meaning. Grass grows inches overnight, and people often mow their lawns or play baseball at 2 a.m. because the light looks exactly like 2 p.m. Fact 31. The opposite, polar night. The price for endless summer light is the polar night. In those same northern communities, the sun dips below the horizon in November and doesn't rise again for over 60 days. However, it isn't always pitch black. There's often a period of civil twilight, a stunning, deep blue ethereal glow that reflects off the snow. Residents live their lives in this blue twilight, relying on the moon and the aurora to light the landscape. Fact 30. A peninsula full of active volcanoes. The Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Islands are formed by the collision of the Pacific and North American tectonic plates. This geologic violence has created over 80 major volcanoes in this arc alone. It's one of the most volatile landscapes on Earth. In 2008, the Kasatochi volcano erupted and covered its entire island in ash, burying a diverse ecosystem that scientists are now watching recolonize from scratch, a living laboratory of evolution. Fact 29. The coldest temperature in U.S. history. We know Alaska is cold, but the numbers are hard to comprehend. On January 23, 1971, a thermometer at Prospect Creek Camp in the Endicott Mountains bottomed out at minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 62 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, exposed skin freezes in seconds, steel becomes brittle and can snap like glass, and tires develop flat spots that won't roll until they warm up. It remains the coldest reliable temperature ever recorded in the United States. Fact 28. A forest that grows on ice. In the interior, you'll sometimes see spruce trees tilting wildly in different directions, looking chaotic and unstable. These are known as drunken forests. They occur when the permafrost beneath the trees begins to melt, causing the roots to slump and heave. The trees lose their footing and tilt. It's a slow-motion collapse of the ecosystem, and it's one of the most visible indicators of a warming climate in the north. Fact 27. The glacier that moves like a living creature. While most glaciers retreat, the Hubbard Glacier is famously advancing. It's a surging glacier. It's been thickening and pushing forward for decades. It occasionally blocks the entrance to Russell Fjord, turning the fjord into a lake and threatening to flood the surrounding wilderness. It moves with such force that the calving ice at its face creates waves that can capsize boats miles away. It's nature acting with terrifying unpredictability. Fact 26. Where puffins live in cliffs. Alaska is a seabird paradise. The coastal cliffs, particularly in the Kenai Fjords and the Pribilof Islands, act as vertical cities for millions of birds. Horned and tufted puffins dig burrows into the steep grassy slopes or nest in rock crevices. They're clumsy flyers but incredible swimmers, diving up to 200 feet underwater. In the summer, these cliffs are a cacophony of noise and activity, smelling of salt spray and fish, hosting one of the highest densities of biomass on the continent. Fact 25. A lake that sounds like laser fire. If you stand on a frozen Alaskan lake on a night when temperatures are rapidly dropping, you might hear sounds that belong in a sci-fi movie. As the ice expands and contracts, the tension causes cracks to propagate across the surface. Due to the acoustic dispersion of sound waves through the ice, the high frequencies travel faster than low frequencies, creating a pew-pew laser sound or a singing ping. It creates a natural synthesizer music that echoes off the surrounding mountains. Halfway through, and Alaska is already rewriting what you thought was possible. But we have only scratched the surface of the ice. The state still has more secrets to reveal, from deserts in the Arctic to islands made of glass. Fact 24. Islands made of volcanic glass. In the Aleutian chain, specifically on islands like Unalaska and Umnak, you can find geologic wonders on the beach. There are outcrops and beaches scattered with obsidian, naturally occurring volcanic glass formed when lava cools so rapidly that crystals cannot form. For thousands of years, the Yunangan or Aleut people used this material to craft incredibly sharp, durable tools and weapons, trading this black gold across thousands of miles of ocean. Fact 23. The largest national wildlife refuge. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or ANWR, is a subject of political debate, but geographically, it's a marvel. Covering 19.6 million acres, it's the size of South Carolina. It contains no roads and almost no facilities. It's the nesting ground for birds from all 50 states and 6 continents. It also protects the calving grounds of the porcupine caribou herd, huge groups of musk oxen, and polar bears. It's arguably the wildest diverse ecosystem left in North America. Fact 22. Ice caves made of sapphire light. Beneath glaciers like the Mendenhall or the Matanuska, meltwater carves elaborate tunnel systems through the ice. Because the dense glacial ice absorbs all colors of the spectrum except blue, the light inside these caves is a stunning, deep sapphire. Entering one is dangerous. They shift and collapse frequently. But for those who enter, it feels like walking inside a giant, glowing jewel. The walls ripple with textures carved by water and air currents. Fact 21. The Bering Land Bridge Legacy. During the last ice age, ocean levels were lower, and Alaska was connected to Siberia by a landmass known as Beringia. It wasn't just a bridge. It was a vast grassy steppe where woolly mammoths and scimitar cats roamed. This was the gateway for the first humans entering the Americas. Today, the shallow floor of the Bering Sea is the submerged museum of that lost world, and the genetics of Alaska native populations still hold the ancient lineage of those first travelers. Fact 20. Bald eagles are like pigeons. In the lower 48, seeing a bald eagle is a rare treat. In Alaskan coastal towns like Dutch Harbor or Ketchikan, they're famously common, sometimes even considered pests. They congregate by the hundreds near fish processing plants, perch on dumpsters, and sit on streetlights waiting for scraps. A gathering of eagles is technically called a convocation, and in Alaska, you can see convocations of 50 or more eagles sitting in a single tree, squabbling over fish guts. Fact 19. A desert in the Arctic. It seems like a contradiction, but the Great Kobuk Sand Dunes are a massive active sand dune system located 40 miles above the Arctic Circle. Covering 25 square miles, these golden sands can rise 100 feet high. They're a relic of the glacial age, formed by grinding ice and wind. In the summer, temperatures on the sand can hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, creating a bizarre landscape where you can photograph caribou walking across sand dunes with snow-capped peaks in the background. Fact 18. Rivers that flow backwards. The tides in Alaska are so extreme that they can physically overpower rivers. At Cook Inlet, the incoming tide is so massive that it reverses the flow of water in the Turnagain Arm. This creates a tidal bore, a literal wall of water up to 6 feet high that rushes upstream against the current at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Seals and beluga whales often ride this surge inland to feed on fish that are disoriented by the chaotic water. Fact 17. A time zone spanning 4 hours. Geographically, Alaska is so wide that it spans what should be 4 distinct time zones. However, in 1983, the state consolidated to use primarily Alaska time, with the Aleutians on Hawaii Aleutian time, to simplify business and politics. This leads to a phenomenon known as solar noon being way off. In western Alaska, the sun is at its highest point not at 12 p.m., but closer to 3 or 4 p.m. It creates a skewed sense of time, where morning light lasts well into the afternoon. Fact 16. Icebergs that flip. Icebergs are deceptive. 90% of their mass is underwater. As they melt, their center of gravity shifts, causing them to suddenly and violently flip over. When this happens, they reveal the ice that had been underwater. Ice that's smooth, sculpted, and often a dazzling, deep jewel blue because the water pressure has squeezed out all the air bubbles. This flip can generate massive waves, which is why kayakers are warned to never get too close to a floating berg. Fact 15. The most secluded island community. The Pribilof Islands, specifically St. George and St. Paul, sit in the middle of the Bering Sea, 300 miles from the mainland. These islands are home to small Aleut communities that live at the mercy of the weather. Flights are frequently canceled for days or weeks due to fog and wind. The islands are teeming with 2.5 million seabirds and half of the world's population of northern fur seals, creating a ratio of wildlife to humans that's almost impossible to find elsewhere in civilization. Fact 14. A mountain range made of fire. The Wrangell Mountains are not just high, they're volcanic. Mount Wrangell is a massive shield volcano that's over 14,000 feet tall and covers a huge volume of land. It's currently dormant, but not dead. It's the only volcano in the field that has erupted in recorded history, and it still has active fumaroles or steam vents near the summit. On cold days, you can see the steam plume rising from the snow, a reminder of the heat sleeping beneath the ice. Fact 13. Northernmost U.S. city. Utqiagvik, formerly Barrow, is the northernmost city in the United States. It sits at a latitude of 71 degrees north. The climate is a polar desert, receiving very little precipitation, yet staying frozen for much of the year. The community is majority Inupiat, about 60%, and traditional subsistence hunting for whales and seals is not just a hobby, but a vital part of survival and culture. Here, the ocean freezes solid, and the horizon is often indistinguishable from the sky. Fact 12. Frozen waves of light. While we mentioned the aurora before, Alaska sees a specific, rare form called dunes or coronas. Sometimes the aurora appears not just as a curtain, but as a ripple pattern that looks like sand dunes in the sky, or a corona where the rays seem to explode outward from a single point directly overhead. This perspective makes you feel as if you're standing inside the aurora itself. It's a dizzying, psychedelic experience that silent observers often describe as spiritual. Fact 11. The world's highest tides in the North Pacific. We mentioned the Boar Tide, but the sheer vertical change is staggering. Anchorage and the Turnagain Arm have the second highest tides in North America after the Bay of Fundy, with water levels changing by up to 40 feet in roughly 6 hours. That is a vertical change greater than a 3-story building. If you walk out onto the mudflats at low tide, you're walking into a death trap. The mud acts like quicksand, and the water returns faster than a human can run. Fact 10. A rainforest in Alaska. When people think of Alaska, they think of snow. But the southeast panhandle is dominated by the Tongass National Forest, the largest national forest in the U.S. It's a temperate rainforest. It receives over 100 inches, sometimes up to 200 inches of rain a year. It's a world of massive ancient Sitka spruce and western hemlock trees, dripping with moss and ferns. The biomass density here, the amount of living water per square foot, is higher than in most tropical rainforests. Fact 9. The Caribou Superhighway. The Western Arctic caribou herd is one of the largest free-ranging herds of animals on Earth. Though numbers fluctuate, the herd has historically numbered over 200,000 animals, dropping to 164,000 in recent counts, which is still massive. Their migration covers thousands of miles of tundra. When the herd moves, the ground literally shakes, and the landscape appears to be a moving carpet of brown fur and antlers. It's a migration scale comparable to the wildebeest of the Serengeti. Fact 8. The glacier that sounds like thunder. In Glacier Bay National Park, the act of calving, ice breaking off into the sea, is a full sensory experience. The Tlingit people call the bay Siti-Tiki, the bay in place of the glacier. When a block of ice the size of a cruise ship shears off, the sound hits you seconds later. A crack like a rifle shot followed by a deep, resonating boom called white thunder. It's a visceral reminder that the landscape is active, changing, and destroying itself to create something new. Fact 7. The state with the most lakes. Alaska's water stats are mind-bending. The state has over 3 million lakes larger than 20 acres. If you count smaller ponds, the number jumps even higher. In the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta alone, the landscape is more water than land. A labyrinth of ponds and sloughs that look like a fractured mirror from the air. Most of these lakes have never been named, and it's almost a certainty that millions of them have never been touched by a human hand. Fact 6. Salmon that turned bright red. The sockeye salmon, or red salmon, undergoes one of nature's most dramatic metamorphoses. In the ocean, they're silver and blue. As they enter fresh water to spawn, they stop eating. Their bodies absorb their own scales, their heads turn green, their jaws hook into a terrifying kype, and their bodies turn a brilliant, shocking crimson red. When thousands fill a shallow stream, the water looks like it's flowing with blood. It's a tragic, beautiful final act of life. Fact 5. A river of lava that never fully cooled. In 1912, the Nova Erupta volcano erupted in the Katmai region, the largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century, 30 times larger than Mount St. Helens. It buried a river valley in up to 700 feet of ash and pumice. For decades, thousands of steam jets burst through the ash, giving it the name the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. While the smokes have mostly quieted, the landscape remains a barren, moon-like expanse of orange and gray ash that astronauts use for training. Fact 4. Clouds that look like spacecraft. Alaska's high mountains disrupt the flow of strong winds, creating lenticular clouds, or altocumulus lenticularis. These are stationary, lens-shaped clouds that form on the downwind side of peaks like Denali or Mount Redoubt. They look exactly like stacked flying saucers or polished, smooth stones hovering in the sky. They're notorious for containing severe turbulence for pilots, but from the ground, they look like a peaceful alien invasion fleet. Fact 3. Gold, still hidden everywhere. The gold rush of the 1890s wasn't the end of the story. Geologists estimate that Alaska still holds massive, untapped gold reserves. Prospecting is still a viable, though difficult, lifestyle here. Beyond the active mines, the backcountry is dotted with ghost mines. Dredges left rusting in creeks, cabins with plates still on the table, and tools abandoned where they fell. The history isn't in a museum. It's rotting slowly into the tundra, guarded by bears and silence. Fact 2. The land of, literally, the midnight sun. We mentioned the Arctic, but even in the subarctic interior of Fairbanks, the summer solstice is a massive event. The Midnight Sun Game is a baseball tradition played by the Alaska Gold Panners every year on the solstice. The game begins at 10:30 p.m. and ends around 1:30 a.m. No artificial lights are used. The sun dips just below the horizon, but the sky remains bright enough to play ball. It's a surreal community celebration of light in a place that spends half the year in the dark. Fact 1. Wilderness that still has no ending. The most staggering fact about Alaska is simply its emptiness. Alaska has a population density of roughly 1.3 people per square mile. In Manhattan, that number's over 70,000. You can fly a small plane for hours in a straight line and see no roads, no power lines, and no buildings. You can hike into the Brooks Range and stand on a peak where no human, not even an ancient hunter, has likely ever stood. In a world that's mapped, tracked, and paved, Alaska remains the last place where the map still feels unfinished. From shimmering auroras and thousand-mile migrations to volcanoes rising from the sea, Alaska is a place where the wild still rules. It's not just remote, it's elemental, powerful, and astonishing on a scale few places can match. It challenges our perception of size, of cold, and nature itself. If this journey gave you a new appreciation for the last frontier, hit subscribe, tap the like button, and tell us in the comments, which Alaskan fact surprised you the most? Was it the mosquitoes, the earthquakes, or the endless sun? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next adventure around the world.